The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Foster, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Yellen, Chair Powell, I'd like to probe a little bit deeper on central bank digital currencies, and in particular, the need for a secure digital ID for participants. I believe that both of you are on the record as acknowledging that an anonymous, untraceable digital dollar is not a viable option for our country or the free world because its ability to be abused for money laundering, terrorism financing, ransomware, and so on. Is that principally correct?
I don't think I am on the record for that, but I'll go on the record now for it.
Nor am I on the record, but I would agree that we need to be very careful about the use of a digital currency for illicit finance, and an anonymous currency makes that much harder to control.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's sort of logically impossible. And so on the other hand, I believe that the Chinese approach to digital currencies that give the government immediate and unconditional access to all transaction information will be equally unacceptable to Americans and to most citizens of the free world. And therefore, a digital dollar will be crucially dependent on having an effective authentication component. That is a secure and legally traceable and maximally privacy-preserving way for participants to authenticate themselves as a unique, legally traceable individual, a secure digital ID. And it must be backed by a trusted court system and a clear legal regime to determine the conditions under which the participants might be unmasked. As a digital dollar, if it's to be used internationally, we're then going to need a digital ID system that operates internationally, at least among the free countries of the world. I'd like to thank you both for beginning engagement with authorities in other countries on central bank digital currencies. And I was wondering where you see this discussion going as far as a secure digital ID and a means of authentication across boundaries, across countries.
Maybe I should let Chair Powell. I should let Chair Powell start with this because he's been more involved than I have.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, where we are is we are engaged in a process of looking at all of the technical issues and design issues which interact with each other, and that's one of the most basic ones. Reflecting your earlier question, I don't think that a system that relies entirely on, for example, completely private governance or completely secret information about who's actually owning the digital dollar would not be viable. And the lack of privacy in the Chinese system is just not something we could do here. At the same time, so there's got to be a balance, and it does call for using the two-tiered system in some way, so that there's a wallet outside of the central bank, and transfers can take place there, and that there are appropriate protections. We're only beginning to think carefully about these things, and it's going to be a careful, detailed, and probably lengthy process of consideration. One that we're investing quite a bit in now, and that I expect will last some time.
Yeah, Secretary Yellen, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I would.
The issue of a secure digital ID is very much in your court, having to do with one of the things the coronavirus laid bare is the lack of simply a list of citizens of the U.S. and in our ability to rapidly distribute funds, particularly to the underbanked. A high quality and universal digital ID in the U.S. would have made that immeasurably easier, as well as everything from, vaccine certificates or you name it. And so this has been, it's an ongoing discussion on many fronts. And there are also specific proposals. I believe you've had letters urging both of you to look into this in more detail. And so I was just wondering what the state, just as simply as a means for citizens to receive payments, Fed accounts, each one of us has already an account with the federal government, the IRS at least. And I was wondering how you saw this part of the conversation going.
I think it's something that's worth exploring. I've not done so, but we would be glad to have further conversations with you about how something like this could work. There's certainly a problem, as you've mentioned.
This time has
Thank you.
expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams.